Well, good morning. You're sitting here with me at the Marysville Union County Airport. It is currently Friday, July 31st, last day of July 2015. And we're going to go up today for a quick ride in the AeroV Turbo on my airplane. This is YX kit number 56. I wanted to make this video real quick to show you a little bit on not only how the AeroV Turbo performs, but also just flying procedures when you're flying the Turbo. A little bit of background information right now. I'm looking at ForeFlight. I know it's hard to see the screen, so looking at ForeFlight, and we'll listen to the ATIS as we taxi out. But currently it's about 10 in the morning. Winds 280 at 5, visibility 10, clear below 12,000. Temperature is 24 degrees centigrade, which is about 75. Altimeter is 3004, and current density altitude is already about 2,500 feet. So it's already warming up, as you would expect at the end of July. I just got back from the trip to Oshkosh late last week. Had a great time flying up and back to Oshkosh. Saw a lot of beautiful airplanes and saw a lot of great friends. A lot of interest in the Turbo, so that's kind of why I wanted to make up a quick video just to explain procedures and give you a little glimpse of performance. So I know it's really tough to see the screen right now, given the sun and also just where you're located at. So right now, the local altimeter set in. Altimeter is 1,080 feet. Field elevation here is actually about 1,030. I taxied over the fuel pump, so my engine's already a little bit warm. Cylinders are all 150, 170 at this point. Oil's almost up to 100 already. As you are looking at the Turbo AeroV, a couple things you're going to see a little bit different. The primary new gauge you're going to see is a manifold pressure gauge. I have that located right here next to my RPM gauge, the tachometer, and right now it is, since the engine shut down, it's indicating approximately ambient temperature, or I'm sorry, ambient pressure, which is 29.4 inches, and that's what we should be seeing right now with everything shut down. Manifold pressure should be familiar for anybody who has flown either a turbocharged airplane or a constant speed in-flight adjustable pitch propeller equipped airplane. That's simply a measurement of the air density, the air pressure that's going into the cylinders. On a turbocharged airplane like the AeroV Turbo, this becomes important. This actually becomes a primary engine power gauge, so we don't put too much air into the engine, which is what we would call overboosting it. So for our purposes right now, 40 inches of manifold pressure is considered to be takeoff power, and that's also our maximum allowable manifold pressure. And what I'm going to do here is, as we taxi and as we take off, I'm going to give you indications on what you're going to see for manifold pressure for normal flight operations. It's going to be a little different than a non-turbo AeroV or a Skyhawk, a Warrior, where all you do is just go to the end of the runway, give it full power, and take off. In this case, since the engine and the turbo is capable of putting out more air pressure than what is at maximum allowable, you'll probably be doing takeoffs at less than full throttle movement. So it's just something to kind of get used to and adjust a little bit as we fly. So let's go ahead now. We do have about 10 gallons of fuel right now in the airplane, so that should be enough for a little bit of a flight. Go ahead and close the canopy. Got my little safety pin. The canopy is closed, latched, and pinned, and we're now ready for engine start. So master avionics are on, ignitions are on, fuel, make sure that is turned on as it is. Check left, check right, make sure there's no persons or other airplanes. Throttle's cracked, and engine start. Idling about 1100 RPM, oil pressure on the digital gauge as well as the mechanical gauge, which you probably can't see, but it's over here on the far right side, both indicating oil pressure. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the radio. And let's listen to the AWOS.
No avgas available. Union County Airport.
Automated weather observation. 1405 Zulu. Weather. Wind 280 at 5. Visibility 10. Clear below 12,000. Temperature 25 Celsius. Dew point 19er. Altimeter 3004. Remarks. Density altitude 2,300.
No avgas available.
Alright, so we're going to taxi out to runway 27. Altimeter set in, winds are still mostly light, and they're going right down the runway. As we taxi out, let's talk real quick about takeoff power application. Again, 40 inches of manifold pressure is going to be the maximum allowable for takeoff. That is your takeoff power setting. And the engine and turbo can produce more than that. So as we add power in slowly, we're going to be watching the manifold pressure to make sure we do not exceed 40 inches. And it's a little bit of a challenge. There's a little bit of a delay because as the engine spools up and as the airspeed builds up, the RPMs are going to go up, and that's going to then allow the turbo to spin faster and produce more manifold pressure. So what I normally do in this case is as I'm taxiing out, and by the way, right now that the engine's running, I'm seeing about 16 inches of manifold pressure. So I've now that it's running, it's going to be lower than ambient. So on the takeoff, as I begin the takeoff roll, you're going to see me add power smoothly and slowly, and I'm only going to push the throttle in until I see 35, 37 inches of manifold pressure. Once I get to that point, I'm going to stop increasing power because I know that the manifold pressure is going to increase on its own a little bit more, and hopefully it'll kind of stabilize right at 40. What I personally don't like doing is adding power right to 40, and then as I continue the takeoff roll, pulling power back. That to me is a distraction. I don't really like to do that. So we have our checklist. We've got our engine start checklist is complete, so now we have our before takeoff checklist. Canopy is closed, latched, and pinned. Flaps are up, indicate up. We're going to do a flight control check. Controls are all free and full. Trim is set for takeoff. Go ahead and adjust that for takeoff. I basically just put the trim right in the middle of the range. That works really well for takeoff. Okay, we're going to do the throttle and then ignition check. So, again, I know it's hard to see, but right now I'm at 1,000 RPM. I'm going to bring the throttle up to somewhere over 1,700, maybe 1,800 RPM or so. Somewhere between 1,700 and 2,000 really works fine. So there's power up to about 1,850. Turn off ignition 2. Engine still running smooth. Slight drop RPM. That's back on. Ignition 1. Same drop, it's also running smooth, so that's back on. Power's back to about 1,000 RPM. Engine gauges are all in the green. Oil temperature is now well above 100 degrees, and that's normally what I like to see for takeoff. I like it above 100. Instruments are set, radio is on. We're set to the CTAF frequency 122.8, and lights are on. And that's pretty much that, so. Alright, let's go ahead and begin a takeoff. I'm going to walk you through it as we go. Runway is clear, final is clear, pattern is clear. Union County traffic, experimental 569 kilo Mike, departing 27 Union County. Alright, we're going to taxi onto the runway. Stick is neutral, a little bit of back pressure to keep the tail wheel on the ground. We've lined up the runway, and I'm going to give you call-outs as I go. So right now we're at 1,000 RPM at about 14 inches of manifold pressure. Throttle's coming in. There's 17 inches, 18 inches of manifold pressure, 2,400 RPM, 23 inches, 25 inches, 27 inches, 2,800 RPM, 31, 32 inches of manifold pressure. There's 35 inches. I'm going to go ahead and just stop there for a minute. We're already off the ground. So there's 37 and a half. There's 38 inches of manifold pressure, 3120 on the RPM. 72 miles an hour and accelerating. Right now we're accelerating and going through about 600 feet a minute. That'll get a little bit better here in a moment. Now, as I've not touched the throttle, I'm currently at about 39 inches of manifold pressure, 3180 on the RPM, and through 85 miles an hour, I'm climbing right at about 1,000 feet a minute. 970, 950, about 950 feet a minute, 39 and a half inches of manifold pressure, 3170 on the RPM. And I'm still climbing 850 to 900 feet a minute. Cylinders, my hottest one is about 350 right now. EGTs, I'm looking at 1130 to 1150 on the EGTs. And I'm not really trying to hold any specific airspeed. I just like to climb out at 90 to 100 miles an hour. 90 miles an hour, 39 inches of manifold pressure is turning the prop at about 3180 RPM, and I'm seeing 950 to 1,000 foot per minute climb. Cylinders are very nice and cool, running nice and smooth. I'm going to go ahead and lower the pitch a little bit to get us up to about 100 miles an hour. I'm still running right now about 39 inches of manifold pressure, which is still right about takeoff power. I'm comfortable running at that manifold pressure as long as the cylinders stay nice and cool, and so far they are. There's about 95 miles an hour, 38.5 inches of manifold pressure, about 3,200 on the RPM, and I'm climbing at about 800 feet a minute. Hottest cylinder is stabilized at about 370, 375. And I'm currently climbing through, field elevation was about 1,050. I'm currently going through about 2,800 feet, climbing just a nice cruise climb at this point, climbing at about 700 feet a minute. Okay, there's 3,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and lower the nose a little bit, just kind of let it accelerate. Let's see what it does here. I'm still about 38 inches of manifold pressure. RPM's climbing through about 3,300 RPM at this point, so I may have to actually throttle back a little bit to keep the RPMs from getting too high. Still climbing, so I'll try to lower the nose a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and pull the power back a little bit so I don't exceed the RPM red line. There's 35 inches of manifold pressure, 3,300 and about 3,340 RPM, currently indicating about 143 miles an hour. True airspeed is about 150 or just over. Cylinders are already cooling down pretty drastically. Hottest I'm seeing is about 360 at this point. So 34 inches of manifold pressure, right at 3,400 RPM, 150 indicated, true airspeed of about 156. Cylinders are all nice and cool. Oil pressure, oil temperature is all looking great. Engine's running real nice and smooth. Now this is at low altitude. I could do better if I go higher. Okay, for a normal cruise, I'm going to pull the power back a little bit here. Okay, I've now pulled the power back. I'm at about 30 inches of manifold pressure. Again, manifold pressure has kind of become my primary power gauge in this case. That is what the throttle is directly controlling, is going to be manifold pressure. And then RPM just kind of work out to whatever they are. So right now, 3,000 feet. Density altitude's actually a lot higher than that. 30 inches manifold pressure gives me about 3,150 on the RPM. Let it accelerate here for a minute to get you some good numbers. now I'm at about 134, 135 miles an hour indicated. True airspeed is just over 140 miles an hour. Cylinders, the hottest one I now see is 350. Those are cooling down well. And that's at about 30 inches of manifold pressure. Go ahead and make a turn here. We don't get too far from the airport. If I'm in a hurry, I'm going to bump the power up a little bit. Go ahead and try that. Bring the power up here a little bit higher. You can run this engine nice and hard. You're just going to put a lot of gas to it. There's about 34 inches of manifold pressure. Give me about 3,300 RPM. Climbing through 140 miles an hour indicated, which is giving me a true airspeed of about 150 miles an hour. At 33 inches and 3330 on the RPM. Cylinders are all still nice and cool. So level flight at about 2,900 feet. I'm at 143 indicated. True airspeed is about 150 miles an hour, just over 150, and that's at 34 inches, 3,350 RPM. This thing can move. Now, if we go the other way, we want to do a little bit more of a leisurely cruise. Pull the power back a little. That's 28 inches of manifold pressure. 3,060 on the RPM. Go ahead and lean it out a little bit now since I pulled the power back. Cylinders are all well below 360 at this point. And right now I'm seeing 129, 130 miles an hour indicated. True airspeed is 135. This is on a hot day at a fairly low altitude. As I climb higher, it can certainly do better.
About 5 miles to the west.
Personally, I like to stay low. I like to be able to see what's going on anyway. 27 inches of manifold pressure, 3,050 RPM. That's about 126, 127 indicated. True is about 132. This is a nice leisurely, gentle cruise. I can lean out the engine pretty drastic at this point. Gives me a nice low fuel burn. Beautiful day. Nice and smooth, nice and calm. Still at 28 inches, 3,060 RPM. Cylinders are all 350 or so. EGTs are all 1150 to 1175. 128 indicated, 133, 134 true. Does just fine. Obviously the airplane's not going to fly any different with the addition of the turbocharger. It's still an absolute blast to fly. The only thing I try to tell people when they're thinking about the turbocharger is you have to be a little bit more gentle on throttle movements. It's very easy to overboost the engine if you just ham fist it, push it all the way forward. We don't really fly high altitude, so we don't have to worry about shock cooling the engine, but you still want to be gentle when you're either adding or reducing power, just to be gentle on the engine, gentle on the turbo. Airport's now about 4 miles north of us, off our right wing. in case you're wondering, the prop that I currently have installed is a Lonnie Prince, a Prince prop. It's one of his P-tip models, 54-inch diameter by 50 inches of pitch. So it's equivalent to the Sonex Cincinnati recommendation for their climb prop. And that's what this propeller does very well. As you saw in the takeoff, we were, without even trying, getting easily 900 to 1,000 feet a minute climb. And that's what this prop does as well. I've tried a few others. Some do a little bit better in terms of cruise, but for me, I really wanted to add the turbo to this airplane for climb, comfort and climb anyway. So this has worked out very happy. I've been very, very happy with this propeller. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start an easy descent on down to get back into the traffic pattern, and I'm going to continue calling out power settings and temperatures as best as I can. I know it's tough for you to see. Turn my radio back up a little bit here. There's a real nice grass strip portion of the runway just to the south of the paved runway, so we're going to plan on making a landing on that. Descent, I bring the power back to somewhere around maybe 25 inches, just nice and gentle. As we talked about, you don't want to make any sudden abrupt power changes, just be nice and gentle. There's about 25 inches, and I'm still turning 2960 on the RPMs. Doing just a nice gentle 300 foot per minute descent. Union County traffic, experimental 569 Kilo Mike is 3 miles southwest, 45 for the downwind, 27 grass landing, Union County. 25 inches and a nice gentle descent. I'm still at about 135 miles an hour indicated. Cylinders are all nice and cool at this point. Go ahead and enrich my mixture a little bit, get ready for landing. Looking out for other traffic. Haven't seen or heard anybody. Continues to come back slowly. It's about 24 inches. Just below 24 inches, 23 and a half inches. Manifold pressure is about 2,700 RPM. That's comfortable just to start getting into the pattern here as we turn downwind. Union County traffic, 569 Kilo Mike, downwind, 27 Union County. There's 24 inches, 2650 on the RPM. Airspeed is, I'm kind of climbing a little bit, so it's my fault, but airspeed's now down to about 100. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the first notch flaps. And I'm actually going to keep bringing the power back here, so we can start a nice, easy descent. 20 inches, about 18 inches of manifold pressure. I'm going to hold the nose up a little bit to start bleeding off some airspeed. 80 to 90 miles an hour works real well for the downwind in my opinion. There's 85 and I'm doing a slight descent. I'm going to bring a little bit more power back. 16 inches of manifold pressure, 2,000 on the RPM, 85 miles an hour, and I'm descending about 500 feet a minute. Make our turn on the base. Union County traffic, Kilo Mike base, 27 Union County. 85 miles an hour, 15 inches, 2,000 RPM. A little high, I'm going to go bring in my second notch of flaps. Don't see anybody on opposite base, extended final or short end final, so we're going to make our turn to final. 80 miles an hour. Start slowing it down a little bit more here. Union County traffic, Kilo Mike, final, 27 Union County grass. 13 inches, 1,800 RPM, still 85 miles an hour, so I'm going to bring the nose up just a little bit to bleed off some of that speed. They're slowing through 80. And I'm at about 14 inches of manifold pressure, 1800 RPM. I fly pretty low flat approaches, so hopefully Joe Norris at the factory didn't get too mad at me. 70 miles an hour. Adding just a little bit of power back in, but not too much. Still at about 70 miles an hour. Try to cross the edge of the grass at about 55 to 60. There's 60. 55. Power comes back to idle, set up for the 3-point attitude. There's 40 miles an hour, and you just touch down right about at 40 miles an hour. Go ahead and give it a little bit of power so I don't get too slow here in the grass. Alright, nobody on the pavement. Go ahead and cross over here. And there we go. Alright, lights are off. Oops, there we go. The last thing you want to do here is what we call a turbo cool down. Since the turbo does not use any type of antifreeze liquid cooling, the only thing that we can use to dissipate heat out of the turbo bearings is oil. So once we get here to the hangar, I'm going to let it idle for just a few moments. If you have a long taxi and you're just running it at idle through the taxi, that also would work just fine. But you generally want to let this sit and idle, and when I say idle, I mean keep it below 1500 RPM for at least a couple of minutes. What this is doing, it's helped cooling down the turbo. You're using the oil to dissipate the heat out of the turbo bearings and return it back to the engine, and that's going to help prolong the bearing life of the turbo. As I say here right now, oil pressure, I'm looking at about 15 psi on the mechanical gauge. Digital gauge is showing me about 10 psi. The oil is nice and warm. It's at 170 degrees. 16 inches of manifold pressure, 1,000 RPM. Go ahead and turn my radio off. So this is just helping cool things down. Once you've let it run for a while, let it idle for a while, you can go ahead and shut things off accordingly. I normally just turn the fuel valve off and the engine shuts itself down. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea of what it's like to fly the turbo, how we use power to control the engine horsepower. And if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day.